Hey, number ones, welcome to Metatron's Academy. So today we're checking out Matt versus the World because he made a video that is about the topic that I'm particularly interested in, and it's everyone is wrong about the pitch accent, pitch accent. Now, pitch accent is a massive topic when it comes to Japanese language learning. Specifically, it's an area of warfare, open warfare, in fact. Now, I'm one of those who thinks that pitch accent is a valuable element of language learning when it comes to Japanese, but at the same time, I'm more of a moderate Japanese pitch learner, if you will, or teacher, in the sense that, yeah, it's good if you want to learn it, but it's not absolutely necessary, and I don't think you should obsess over it. But also, I'm strongly against the people that say pitch accent is useless, no one learns it, it's wrong, it's false, you shouldn't do it, they're just making it up to try and gatekeep. Yeah, you're an imbecile if that's what you think, and you belong to the language. It's just the reality is that you don't want to learn it, and you're coping. It's cope. So pitch accent is important. It's a very good aspect of Japanese fluency if you want to sound as close to a native as possible, but it is not necessary. That's me. But I said it in 5 minutes. He made a 1 hour and 18 minutes video, so I'm sure he's going to go into much more detail. I'm not going to watch the entire thing, but let's watch a little bit. Let's see if we agree.
What the is the deal with Japanese pitch accent? If you look on the online Japanese learning community, you hear completely contradictory things.
Right.
There's people on one hand saying that it's extremely important and that if you speak Japanese with bad pitch, you're going to sound like an idiot and people are going to have a hard time understanding you. And then there's other people saying that it's pretty much completely overrated. It doesn't really matter. Japanese people don't really care. And overall, this is kind of just a scam that people use to gatekeep the Japanese learning process.
Yeah, they're both wrong. The latter being more wrong, because the latter is complete idiocy. But the first one is also wrong, because while I do agree that the pitch is important, at the same time, even if you mess up the pitch, as long as you pronounce clearly, Japanese will understand you. So it's not true that the pitch is necessary for communication. And oftentimes when the pitch is the key element, context will resolve even in those cases. I love learning the pitch, and I will try to learn as much pitch as possible, and you cannot stop me.
So what is the actual reality? Well, like most things in life, it's not black or white.
Yes.
The truth exists somewhere in that kind of muddy, fuzzy, gray middle ground. And in this video, I want to really do a deep dive on what this gray, muddy reality of pitch accent really is so that you can have a really nuanced, three-dimensional understanding of this territory. Because there's so much information, so much misinformation that I see almost every single day in the online Japanese learning community.
Does pitch accent matter?
How important is pitch accent really? Well, the kind of common argument that you might hear is that, well, it's important because different words are pronounced with different pitch, right? There's a lot of words in Japanese where the only differentiating factor in its pronunciation is the pitch accent, right? The common examples that you hear is hashi and hashi, meaning chopsticks and bridge, right? Or ame and ame, meaning candy or rain.
And then even worse, when they have the same pitch without a particle. So hana and hana, which are then differentiated once you add the particle. One becomes hanaga and the other hanaga. So yeah, there's that.
Right. So if the only difference between these words' pronunciation is the pitch accent, then if you mess up the pitch, you're going to be literally saying the wrong word. And this is true. But even though this is the case, messing up pitch doesn't make your Japanese unintelligible nearly as much as you might think.
Yeah.
And especially when we compare Japanese to tonal languages like, for example, Mandarin Chinese, right? So in Mandarin Chinese, they have tones, which are actually very similar to Japanese pitch accent. And if you completely butcher the tones, it's actually going to really make it harder for native speakers to understand you. And sometimes they just won't be able to understand you at all. And from what I've heard, this is actually a really big problem for learners because even though that they are taught about tones, most people learning Chinese don't spend a lot of time really drilling them and working.
I wouldn't say most, but there are some students absolutely that discount the importance of tones, and there are some cretins, teachers, who actually tell you, oh, don't worry about the tones, I didn't learn the tones, and I could speak perfectly. No, you can't. No, you can't. Shut up.
Working on them. And so when they speak Mandarin, they end up having some wacky tones.
Yeah.
And apparently there are a lot of people that will say things like that there's some conspiracy where native speakers are purposely pretending that they don't understand.
Yeah, there are imbeciles that say that too. Goodness gracious. Like, just learn the features of the language. Don't pick... I'm going to say it. I'm agreeing with him up to now. Do not pick a tonal language, whether it be Mandarin, whether it be Cantonese, whether it be Vietnamese, I don't even care. Do not choose a tonal language if you just do not want to learn the tones. Learn Spanish. Don't learn Mandarin and be like, I don't really need the tones, try to figure out ways around. Oh, it's the native speakers that are actually pretending. Just don't.
In spite of, speaking this foreigner speaking perfect Chinese, when in reality they're probably just butchering the tones, and so it literally is too hard for the native speaker to understand them.
Yeah.
So if we compare Japanese to a situation like that in Mandarin Chinese, it's not nearly going to be as much of an issue, right? I hear foreigners completely butchering the pitch all the time.
All the time.
And in general, it doesn't cause that many problems with communication.
True.
Now, there's this interesting thing that happens.
Also, because I want to add, sometimes the distinction between two words is only present in the Tokyo version, which is, of course, standard Japanese or Hyojungo, meaning that sometimes the Japanese from other areas do not differentiate. They use the same pitch for the same word, and it can still be perfectly understood. So don't look at it as a necessary feature for understanding and communication, but do look at it as a necessary feature for sounding as close to a native as possible, because, of course, even if you did not want to pick up the Tokyo variety and you wanted to sound like someone from another area, they still have their own pitch rules, though. They still have their own pitches, it's just that it's different from the one in Tokyo, particularly if it's west versus east, or if it's someone from the islands, up or down. It's all an island, but you know what I mean. Yeah, so there's that.
Where the amount that pitch accent mistakes are going to get in the way of native speakers understanding you actually depends on what level you're at Japanese.
Yeah.
And paradoxically, the better that you get at Japanese, the more that pitch accent mistakes are probably going to throw native speakers off. And the reason for this is that when you're a beginner, everything is just going to be completely garbage, right? Not only your pitch accent, but your pronunciation, your grammar, the way you're using words. It's going to sound like what Japanese people call katakoto, which basically just means you sound like complete garbage in the language. And so when a Japanese person is like, oh, this guy's like a noob, he's like speaking katakoto, then they're going to do this move internally. I mean, it's going to be unconscious, but what they're going to do is they're basically just going to ignore pitch accent as an entire dimension of the language when they're listening to you speak. So whether you get the pitch...
And they, as you say, subconscious, because it's not like subconsciously, because it's not like Japanese expect foreigners to know the pitch. Yeah, things just sound odd, naturally. They don't actually think, oh, he didn't use the heiban pattern. Most Japanese don't even know that's what they're called. They use them, but they don't know the names. Odaka, Tamadaka. So don't use that, by the way. I can already see some pitch accent students telling, as they're having a conversation with the Japanese, telling them, so is this word Atamadaka, right? It's not Odaka pattern. The Japanese being like, what on earth are you on about, unless they're a linguist?
Pitch accent right or wrong, they're basically just going to kind of subtract pitch accent as a dimension when listening to you speak, because they're going to intuit that your pitch accent is just going to be completely willy-nilly along with the rest of your pronunciation. And so at this very beginning stage, when you're doing like your first output ever and you still sound really bad, pitch accent mistakes probably won't matter that much.
Yeah.
But if we go to the opposite extreme, let's say you sound almost perfect and your pitch accent is actually really good, but you just pronounce one word with the wrong pitch, it's going to stick out because everything else is native-like. That one random pitch accent mistake that you make is going to stick out, and it's actually going to be more likely to throw off a native speaker.
Maybe not throw them off, but they might tell you. If you sound really good, this has happened to me, not because I think that I sound really good, but I am fluent. So when I was in Japan, was living there for a few years, sometimes it would happen that I'm pronouncing things generally fine, although then again, I'll be honest with you, because I didn't put as much effort into the pitch as I did with other aspects of language learning. I was aware of it and I tried to study and pick it up. I basically created a weird version of the language whereby I would usually do the atamadaka, so the high to low patterns, well, because I could distinguish them easily and mimic. So ongaku or kazoku, like I would notice it. Like, oh, they don't say kazoku, like I would imagine like for watashi and other words that do have that sound. And so I would just mimic it. And usually the atamadaka, I get it right. Usually. There are some times when I don't, but usually I get it right. The heiban pattern, the low to high and stays high, is the other one that I naturally noticed. I was aware of it. My teacher at university told me about it, but she never taught me the rules. But I did notice it, and so I would naturally try to imitate it and produce it. I did not even know Odaka existed, the one that sounds like the heiban, so low to high, but then the particle attaches low. I spoke Japanese with zero odaka, nothing. Because even when they used it, I didn't notice it. I did not notice it because I did not study it right. I didn't know. And so what I would do is I would say heta desu, even though it's heta desu. So I would basically map it into a heiban because I was used to that sound. So basically, I created a artificial version of the language where every odaka turns into a heiban, and that takes time to correct. And so even now, I still mess up with that because the odaka pattern it kills me. Goodness gracious, that pattern is the one that I find the most difficult. And then another one is that when it comes to the nakadaka pattern, so low, high, low, where there is a drop somewhere, like taberu, for instance, or one of the possible pronunciation of katana. That one, sometimes I would also map it into heiban. So basically my pitch accent was overwhelmingly heiban with some good atamadaka, and then I would mess up. The nakadaka, sometimes I would do it right, but sometimes I would map it into heiban. There are some words that are fine both ways. I've heard Japanese say katana and katana both ways, but there are other words like no Japanese would say taberu, it's taberu, and that's that. Or nihon, it's not nihon, okay? So, yeah, there's that.
Like, I remember listening to one really fluent foreign speaker of Japanese, and his pitch was almost perfect, but he accidentally said koukai instead of koukai. Right. And koukai means to regret. Koukai means to publicly release something. And even in my brain, I was like, wait, what? He released? What did he release? And then I realized that it was the wrong pitch.
From the context, I think you can understand something like that. But that's a mistake I could have made 100%. 100%.
But that only happens to me when people are almost perfect at pitch accent, because that's when my brain is actually, trying to use that person's pitch accent as information to deduce what they're saying. And so in this way, basically pitch accent will, in kind of paradoxically, cause more communication problems the higher level that you are. And even at my level, my pitch accent is pretty good. I've worked on it pretty hard, but occasionally I'll still have a slip of the tongue and make a mistake. And even recently, there was a time where I used the wrong pitch, and it actually did cause a problem in miscommunication. Mm-hmm. And this was kind of a funny minimal pair you don't hear that much. But there's these two words in Japanese, fuku and fuku.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Where fuku means to spray something or blow something, and fuku means to wipe something, like to wipe a surface clean. And this is very specific situations, but if you're living in Japan, you're speaking Japanese every day, you're eventually going to run into one of these specific situations. So the other day, I had this old Febreze that I pulled out of some box that hadn't been touched in years. And I was with my Japanese friend. We were trying to figure out whether we could still use this Febreze or whether we had to throw it away. And there was kind of mold on the nozzle. So what I wanted to say was like, well, why don't we just try wiping off the nozzle? Yeah. And so I said, fuite mitara do? My Japanese friend was like, oh, I already tried, spraying it once. It didn't clear the mold from the nozzle. And so what I meant to say was, why don't you try wiping it off? But because I said fuite instead of fuite, I literally said, why don't you just try spraying it again? And so in this specific case, I said the wrong pitch. And because both versions were plausible in this situation, the Japanese person literally misunderstood what I was saying.
This is so interesting, actually. Very good video so far. That could have been avoided. Of course, you can avoid it by mastering the pitch, or you could avoid it in the easier way, which is make the sign with the hand. So you could say, again, we understand that we need to say fuite mitara do, fine. But even if I said fuite mitara do, I think the guy would know that that's right. So I guess that's one way. But then again, if you do know the pitch, that's cool. More power to you. More power to you. I imagine that, of course, his pitch is definitely much better than mine. And so that's very interesting for me, actually, to listen to how we could navigate these societal situations.
So this will happen to you occasionally.
Yes.
But all in all, I would say that if you're purely just talking about communication difficulties, yes, basically it's true that pitch accent mistakes are probably not going to trip native speakers up that much.
Yeah,
I would say that if you have kind of like average, you're a high level speaker, you've reached fluency, but you have kind of the average foreigner's level of pitch, which is pretty bad. On the whole, it's not going to cause that many problems in communication. For the most part, Japanese people are going to be able to just infer what you mean even when you make a mistake.
Yes.
But there will be sometimes, like maybe if you're living in Japan and you're speaking Japanese every day, maybe once or twice a week, there'll be a moment where you say something and they go, huh? And then maybe they spontaneously realize it, or maybe you have to re-say what you said or clarify because you said something with the wrong pitch. So if someone is saying that literally it's going to never cause a problem because context always makes it clear, no, that's false. But it's also nothing like Chinese in that it's going to be constantly causing you issues if you have bad pitch.
Okay, very good so far. One thing I want to add as well is that the people that say, because it's fine if you, as a personal goal, are like, I want to try to sound as native as possible. I don't care. I just want to be able to be understood, and I want to be able to speak to the Japanese. But even if I sound as foreign as a freaking whatever it is, then it's fine by me. That's your personal goal, and it's fine. It's okay. Not everyone needs to try and perfect. I would still say work on the pronunciation to ensure communication clarity. So don't sound too thick, because then they won't understand at this point. Get a translator, get an interpreter. But then again, if you don't want to go into, like, I don't care about, some people like me and him and Dorgan, we want to try and sound as native as possible. And so we enjoy it, we love it. And if you are someone like this, but you think you can reach it without studying the pitch, because you think, oh, I'm just going to naturally acquire it, you're fooling yourself. So at this point, I respect more the guy that says, I don't want to sound like native. I don't care. It's fine. Just work on your pronunciation so you're understood, and that's fine. I respect him more than people that say, no, I know that when I speak Japanese, I sound just like a Japanese, and then they massacre the pitch completely. And then they tell you, though, oh, I just picked it up naturally. No, you didn't. It's impossible to pick up perfect pitch naturally. Impossible. So I'm with him on this one.
Overall, although, like I explained, there's nuance depending on what level you're at, it will cause you some problems occasionally, but it's not going to be a huge deal. Like, is it going to be a massive quality of life to, not have these communication hiccups? I mean, it definitely is a quality of life improvement, but it's not going to be like a night or day difference.
Yeah.
In fact, I would say the thing that's just nice about knowing pitch accent is that when you go to say a word that you haven't heard that often or you're not that confident in, basically you have a way to make sure that you're saying it correctly.
Right.
And so if you say something and a Japanese person goes, huh? You can kind of go in your head and be like, is the pitch accent the reason why they didn't understand me? Or is it because I made a different mistake? Or is it just because they're confused why I'm saying what I want to say, even though what I'm actually saying is getting perfectly communicated? So kind of just having that clarity. Like, I feel like for a lot of people that don't really know pitch accent, but they just know pitch accent is a thing, whenever they're in that moment where there's kind of like a little mini miscommunication, they don't know whether it was pitch accent or not. And they'll kind of assume and be like, oh, I must have made a pitch mistake. But maybe they didn't. And so there's that kind of psychological stress of being in the dark. But overall, like I said, that's not going to happen all the time. Overall, when you get good at Japanese, that's probably going to happen maybe like, once or twice a week if you're speaking Japanese every single day. So it's not a huge deal.
Important to underline, I want to add on to this, the miscommunication. If you get good at Japanese without focusing on the pitch, the miscommunication would only happen once or twice a week. But you messing the pitch is going to happen every day. Just so we're clear, unless you study it.
On a kind of similar note, I want to talk about this idea that pitch accent doesn't matter because Japanese has many different regional dialects.
I hate it
and
when
different
they say
regional dialects have different pitch accent systems. So, first of all, yes, this is true. There are many different dialects of Japanese that are spoken all over the country of Japan. When it comes to pitch accent systems, there's not as many pitch accent systems as there are different dialects of Japanese. Mm-hmm. So there's probably like an innumerable amount, probably hundreds of dialects across Japan. Broadly speaking, there's only really 3 or arguably 4 different types of pitch accent that you can find across Japan.
Right.
And the vast majority of those fall into one of 2 categories, which is basically like Tokyo style pitch and Kansai style pitch. And I use this word Tokyo style because that's actually what a lot of the literature within linguistics uses, even though it's spoken in a much broader area than just Tokyo. It's pretty much, the basis of pitch accent for the entirety of northern Japan and Hokkaido and stuff as well. But that's the term that's used. So really, if you live in Japan and even if you're a Japanese person, the pitch accent systems that you make contact with on a regular basis are going to be the vast majority of the time this Tokyo style pitch or Kansai style pitch. And then there's some areas in northern Japan, like Ibaraki, where they actually don't have pitch accent.
I'm curious when it comes to the little purple, because he didn't put a nomenclature here and I'm not familiar. Let's see.
And sometimes you'll hear that as well, although it doesn't have a very good association with it. Like I think Dogen once used the term, like it kind of gives you the impression or the image in your head of like mushroom farmers. So like, yeah, most Japanese people, you know, if you're gonna hear somebody that's speaking one of the dialects that doesn't have pitch accent, it's generally not perceived in the most positive light. It kind of has like a hillbilly, uneducated type of sound to it. I'm not saying that it should be that way. I think it's kind of sad because we should embrace all dialects of the language and all ways of speaking the language, but that's just the reality of within Japan.
Agreed.
And then there is also a different pitch accent system in Kyushu, but I don't think most people come in contact with Kyushu's or especially in like Kagoshima. Kagoshima has its own pitch accent system. I don't think most people come in contact with this on a daily basis. So basically, when you're living in Japan, including if you're just a Japanese person from most places in Japan, the pitch accent systems that you're used to hearing are the Tokyo system and the Kansai system.
Right. And
there might be specific differences, like specific words might have different pitches depending on exactly what prefecture you're from and things like that. But overall, as a system, like 95+% is going to be shared across the dialects. Mm-hmm. So this is true even for Kansai. This is something that even Japanese people don't really realize, but there are many different dialects of Kansai Ben, right? There's Osaka dialect, Kyoto dialect. Yeah. There's how they speak in Hyogo prefecture. Different words. They're different, right? They have different verb endings and different expressions that they say, different personalities. But the actual pitch accent itself is actually the same. There might be subtle...
So interesting, man. This is a good video. This is very good. I do remember actually that studying in the Tokyo variety, because when I first moved to Japan, I did live in Yokohama, which of course has the same pitch as Tokyo. And I was learning, like, just to tell you the first one that comes to mind, the word for dog is inu. It goes up, inu. And then I do remember hearing people in Kansai, as I moved to Kansai at one point, hearing people say inu, the other way around. So I did, in fact, oftentimes that's what we're talking about. It's swapped. Not always, but often.
Differences on like the level of individual words. But
sorry, another one that I just thought is like the way they say thank you. So in Tokyo, it's arigato, arigato, arigato. But I heard people in Kansai saying it like, and I might say it wrong, so please correct me, but it sounded more like arigato. And then even kokoro versus kokoro in Kansai and so on and so forth.
As a system, like I said, it's like 95% plus shared across the system. So that's something that there's a lot of misunderstanding of. So we have these two systems of pitch accent. Now, a lot of times people will talk about Kansai pitch versus Tokyo pitch accent as if they're like completely opposites or unrelated. But the reality is, when you go through the history of Japanese, there's basically one shared pitch accent system that all dialects of Japanese have kind of branched off from. And so they share a common root, and they've gone through systematic changes and kind of branched off and became the different pitch accent systems that we have today. And so although on the surface, sometimes they look pretty different, like there's specific words where you could say the pitch accent is opposite between Kansai and Tokyo, but in reality, they're just systematically shifted by one mora, and they share a lot of systematic traits in common. And this has some pretty important implications. First of all, it means that Japanese people, even if, let's say, they're accustomed to one style of pitch accent, whether that's like Kansai pitch or standard Japanese, or maybe even one of the other rarer ones you don't come across that much, when they listen to a different pitch accent system, they can probably intuit that there's systematic changes, right? This is kind of like what it's like when you hear British English as an American or vice versa, right? You can sense that it's not that they're speaking with a foreign accent, they're speaking with a different native accent because their own dialect is internally consistent.
Yes.
And you can see that there's systematic mappings between, you know, our own dialect or your own dialect and their dialect, right?
Not to mention, even though natives also make mistakes, they're never the same type of mistakes, or usually they're not the same type of mistakes as a foreigner will make. So there is a difference between foreign mistakes, and including in pronunciation, and mistakes that a native would never make because they're native. So they will still pronounce it differently from a native from another area, but they won't pronounce it so differently in a way that it will make them sound foreign. And that's another thing that often happens with very few exceptions.
It's kind of like if you take all of this one vowel, you shift it to this other vowel, you
Yeah.
get the British one, right?
Yeah.
Of course, this is a simplification, but to a large degree. And Japanese people sense this, which is why when they hear a dialect of Japanese with a different pitch accent, it doesn't sound foreign to them. It just sounds like a different native dialect of Japanese. And there's just the fact that, like I said, in general, what you're coming across is standard Japanese pitch, like Tokyo style pitch, or Kansai pitch. And Japanese people from all over Japan have both been exposed to both of those to a pretty extensive degree. So even if they can't speak Japanese with Kansai pitch, for example, people from Tokyo can hear Kansai pitch and know like, oh yeah, this sounds like Kansai pitch, right? Their brain has kind of adapted to Kansai pitch. So yes, it's true that different dialects have different pitches. And probably to a degree, this means that Japanese people are used to basically listening to Japanese with different pitch and inferring what things mean from context, right? People from Tokyo don't have any trouble listening to people from Kansai speak, even though there's different pitch, because they're used to inferring what things mean from context. But again, a lot of it is because Kansai people aren't just speaking with a random willy-nilly pitch accent system. They're speaking with a pitch accent system that has systematic changes from the Tokyo system, and they're also just used to hearing it in general. So they kind of have built up that kind of like ability to naturally hear Kansai pitch in their brain through all these factors.
Yeah.
On the other hand, when the average foreigner speaks Japanese, and I'm going to go into exactly what levels of pitch accent is it common for different learners to reach and stuff. I'll go into that in the next section. But basically, the average foreigner who speaks Japanese, there's two main traits that I would say that makes their pitch accent mistakes distinctively different from the pitch accent, or from the regional differences in native pitch accent systems. First of all, most foreigners, the vast majority of foreigners, they speak Japanese with inconsistent pitch accent.
Correct.
So really the way I
including those that say, oh, you said that my pitch is incorrect because I don't speak like Tokyo. It's because my wife is from Osaka, so I clearly have an Osaka pitch. No, you don't. You have a foreign accent, and so that's that. It's not true. You might have picked up a couple of words from your wife or from where you live, and maybe you do say those with pitch, but it's also possible that you don't maintain it, meaning that sometimes you do, but when you add in emotions, you might completely flip the pitch because you're not doing it, because if you focus, by the way, and you're like, no, I live in Osaka, my husband is from Osaka, I want to learn the Osaka pitch, and you work on it systematically. It's going to be a lot harder because there's going to be a lot less literature, but if you do that, then yes, maybe you do speak with the Osaka pitch, and that's totally fine if that's what you like. But let's not pretend that just because you moved somewhere, or you lived in Osaka, or you lived in Kyoto, oh, well, then whenever I make a mistake on the pitch, it's because I have the other pitch accent. No, you don't, and you're arrogant for thinking that.
Interpret this is that most people, including me in the past before I studied Japanese, basically their brain just never figured out that pitch accent is really a thing.
True.
And what I mean by this is they never realized that certain words are always pronounced with certain pitch patterns.
Exactly.
Their brain treats pitch accent the way that they treats intonation meaning that you could basically just say the word however you feel like saying it in the moment based off your emotions, right? So, when you ask a question, the pitch goes up like, oh, are you going to go? And if you make a statement, you say, oh, you're going to go. It goes down. So they kind of like change the pitch based off the context and their emotions.
So true.
And don't really realize that there's certain aspects of pitch that are basically properties of a word that are not dependent on the context.
Yes.
And so because of this, you'll even hear, it's really common to hear foreigners, speaking, and they'll use the same word in two sentences back to back. And in the first sentence, they pronounce it with one pitch. And in the second, they pronounce it with a different pitch.
This is so good. What a fantastic analysis. He's on point. I don't even care. For anyone who's going to come in the comments and tell me, oh, but in the past, he did this and he did that, and controversial, or people that don't like him because they think he's full of himself and whatnot. Look, it all may be true. We all know about the past of Matt versus Japan. He's made mistakes. He said he recognized the mistakes. He recognized his arrogance in the past. I would like to underline, though, the guy is extremely talented. So I don't want anyone to say, you can say he's arrogant, or was arrogant, hopefully. He grew. I want to give him a chance. Every person who says, hey, I recognize my mistake, I made a mistake, I want to change, I want to start from scratch, I won't do what I did before, fine. I want to always give people a chance. Because oftentimes people don't give me a chance, even though I didn't even make the freaking mistakes. People attach, my haters, attach stuff onto me that I never said. Or they take something I said, twist it, and then they never give me a chance to even say, brother, I didn't mean it that way. I didn't say that. Doesn't matter. Whatever. So I want to give the guy a chance. 100%. In fact, I'd love to have him over for an interview and talk a little bit about the pitch. I would love to do that. 100%. In fact, Matt, if you watch this and you watch it up to this point, my invitation goes to you. But for the people that say he's arrogant, you can say that as a personality trait, but the guy is good. So don't say, oh, the guy doesn't know anything because you think he's arrogant. No, he does, and he's really good. Okay, so we got to separate the two things. But even then, even if you're someone who hates him, that doesn't change the fact that this presentation up to now, 16 minutes in, is on point. And I've heard a lot of people that make videos about the pitch and know absolutely nothing. They are imbeciles. They don't know anything. But maybe you like them because they're nice. Oh, fun guy. Right, but what matters is the truth. Is he pushing? Is he telling you the truth here when it comes to... Absolutely, he's on point. Now, it's an hour and 15 and 18 minutes. There is an hour to go. I'm going to stop the react here because I want you to go and check out the video. He put so much effort into this, and I don't want to react to the entire thing. Also, I've got other things to do. But this was great. And honestly, if you guys like this, go finish the video. And if you like my comments, let me know in the comments. I'm going to invite the guy. We're going to have a conversation, and we're going to post this as a video. Let me know in the comments, and thank you very much for watching.